So you got the test of small things, you got the motive test, and then you have the stewardship test. Number 3, the stewardship test. And Jesus said this, give and it will be given unto you. Luke chapter 6, verse 38. And I have found that only when your hand is open can you receive more from God. If your hands are closed, it's going to be hard for you to receive from God. And I think we need to have the practice of giving on a regular basis because it prevents us from being owned by what we own. Let me say that again. We need to give on a regular basis because it prevents us from being owned by what we own. It's so important. Money is called currency because it's supposed to flow through you. Don't you guys like that? Come on, somebody say, yes, Pastor, it's really good. Thank you. Thank you, John. But when you withhold out of fear or out of greed, you limit what God wants to give to you. And you stop up the currency, right? We want the flow to be like a river of blessing that's going into your life, but not like a reservoir. And I have found that if you open yourself up, God will keep pouring into you. He will. And I have to tell you this, there are some people say that it has purposeful steps about it. And I believe that. Given it shall be given. I believe that it'll be given, as much as you give, you're going to get. All that kind of stuff. And we have one of those position papers on the Christian and positive confession. Name it, claim it, and all that stuff. But I have to tell you this. There were times in my life when I didn't tithe. It was very early on. I graduated from Southeastern, did some seminary, did some other work, and then I started to be in ministry. And man, when I started out in ministry, back then, Pastor Allen, they kept the preachers poor, like really poor. And man, it was tough. And I didn't have enough money to pay my bills and tithe. So I didn't tithe. I didn't give anything. And yet I was standing there. I started a Teen Challenge Center at that time. And man, Teen Challenge was really bad about helping. It was a stewardship test. Now this was back, I was about 24 years old, 23, 24 years old. And so one day I had to go see the ministers in my section because I was still licensed, I wasn't ordained. And so if you're licensed in the assembly, you have to go in and just talk to them and tell them what you're doing, that kind of thing. So I went in, I talked to these 2 guys, and one of them was Brother Schubert, and the other one was Ed Cordero. And I sat there and they said, Phil Cook, how are you doing? And I said, I'm doing great, how are you guys doing? And they said, we love what you're doing. You started a Teen Challenge Center and you're doing a bunch of good stuff. And I said, yeah. They said, what are some of the problems? I said, I very rarely get paid. And they said, yeah, that's a problem. That's a problem. And then they looked at my tithing record for the district and they said, you haven't given anything. And it was half a year by that point. That was in like June or July. So I said, yeah, I know, I need to do something. And those guys looked at me, and they were older and kind, and they both came alongside me at the same time and put their big old claws on me. And they said, Phil Cook, we really believe in you. You need to get this down. He said, they don't teach you this at Southeastern, do they? I said, no. I said, it's just been so hard. We just had a baby, trying to pay for everything. We're both working. Sometimes they get paid, sometimes they don't get paid. And they said, whatever you do, you got to start tithing. And when you have it, give it. And so one of those guys pulled out his wallet and opened his wallet and pulled out his emergency $100 bill. And he handed it to me and he said, send this in and let this be the beginning. That was Nick Schubert that did that for me. And he made me feel about that big. I felt about that big. He said, if you're going to be a minister, you've got to believe what you're doing. He said, one of the problems we have right now in our whole fellowship is guys that actually don't practice what they preach. He said, don't let that be about you. And so from that day on, I went home and I said, Tina, we've got to start tithing. And she said, whatever. She says, I've always been a tither. She said, you're the one who was handling the money. So I said, well, I'm sorry, please forgive me. And from that time on, we started tithing. And that way, you could stand up in church, you could stand up anywhere, and you could be honest and say, yes, I am tithing. And they said, well, Pastor, how much do you tithe? Well, you tithe on what you receive. Someone says, should I tithe on my net income or on my gross income? Pastor Allen, do we tithe on our net or on our gross? Gross. Why? Because you want to be grossly blessed. You don't want to be netly blessed. And then you tithe on whatever the Lord tells you to do. But that's the stewardship test. For some of you, that is going to be the biggest test, besides the motive test and the test of small things. The biggest test is, will God have your wallet? Because I can tell you this, God won't truly have all of you until He's got that. Because where your heart is, right? That's where it's going to be. So if your money's there, I just want to encourage you, get the stewardship test done. Hey everyone, thank you for watching at Rich Valley Church today. The sermon was entitled The Test That We Go Through, and there are a lot of tests in life. We're so glad you were part of our time this morning. And if you want to watch this in full context, just go to that link, and I guarantee you can hear all of it. Again, may God bless you, and I hope you have a great day. Tune back in and hit like.